Should you follow Dave Ramsey's home buying advice in Kansas City? Keep on watching to find out. Hey, and welcome to Fountain City. Thanks for watching. Last week, I saw this video from Dave Ramsey. If you don't know who he is, he's a personal finance guru, somebody who releases a lot of different videos that instruct people, and a lot of his advice does center around home buying, and it centers around what you should do if you're a first-time home buyer. So if you were taking Dave Ramsey's advice, what kind of home would you be buying in Kansas City? Is his advice good for first-time home buyers in Kansas City? Is it bad? Let's dive into the video.
Says, I'm 20 years old and I'm looking to buy a house within 6 months to a year. Besides having 20% down, what other tips would you recommend for a first-time home buyer? Also, is there anything that I need to look out for? I would say there's a couple of things to...
So here's the first thing that with every Dave Ramsey piece of advice, he's going to tell you, have at least 20% down to buy a home. Have at least 20% down to buy a home. Now, in terms of that advice, I think that's solid advice. And the reason that you're going to see why they say this later on in the video is because you can avoid private mortgage insurance or PMI if you have at least 20% down. Now, one of the things that you should know about Dave Ramsey, and my wife and I have followed his advice in various parts of our lives and disregarded his advice in various parts of our lives, so we're not like super strict followers of Dave Ramsey, but I think a lot of his principles are very applicable and you'll be very successful if you can implement them. One of the things that you should know about Dave Ramsey is I think a lot of his advice is predicated on the worst possible scenario. He talks a lot about, creditor or buying property and then having people, having banks call the note due. Based on my experience and talking to a lot of investors who have invested in property over a long period of time, that typically does not happen. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it's not a typical scenario. What Ramsey and Ramsey Solutions is trying to do is put you in the best possible situation in case the worst possible thing were to happen. And I think that's a very legitimate strategy to have. One of the things too is you have to think about it the opposite way. Now, let's just say you were buying a home in Kansas City and you were buying it for $200,000 and you needed to save for 2 years, for 2 more years to put down 20%. Right? 20% of $200,000 would be $40,000. So you needed to save for 2 more years to be able to put that $40,000 down payment on that house. Well, what can happen in those 2 years? Okay, so maybe you're buying a home for $200,000 and you're needing to save for 2 more years to put down 20%, which is $40,000. Or you could buy the home right now and put down anywhere from 3 to 10%, which are the common down payment amounts for anybody buying a home. So you could put down anywhere from 3% to 10%. Yeah, 10% being $20,000 of a $200,000 home, 3% being $6,000 of a $200,000 home. Now, what could happen in those 2 years that you're saving up to get that bigger down payment? The worst case scenario for you not pulling the trigger right now and waiting for 2 years is that property values shoot up and interest rates also shoot up as well. The best case scenario for you is that if you decide to pull the trigger right now and put down 5% or 3% or 10%, then property values shoot up because interest rates shoot up and you get to refinance.
Keep in mind, I think it's great that you're putting 20% down. We would say to do a deal where your payment is no more than 25% of your take home, and that's taxes, insurance, all included in a conventional loan. And I love that you're putting 20% down because then you can avoid PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, and it's just an additional cost there. But with 20% down, you can avoid that.
Hey, so I just realized that I didn't explain what PMI was and why people don't like it. PMI stands for private mortgage insurance. And what private mortgage insurance does is it protects the lender in case you, as the buyer, don't pay them back and you default. But the nice thing about it, or not so nice thing about it, that people really hate is that even though it protects the lender, the buyer pays for it. If you're buying a house with less than 20% down, then it is pretty much standard that you're going to get PMI. And so part of the discussion is, should you wait until you have 20% down to not have to pay PMI, or should you just swallow the PMI and pay it monthly? It can vary depending on how much the house costs. The PMI is going to be more if the house costs more. If the house costs less, the PMI is going to be less. So back to the video.
But I feel like you're in pretty good shape. I mean, other than that, it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, a couple of things. Good idea. Good question, by the way. 15 years.
basically 80% of all mortgages taken out across the United States, not just here in Kansas City, are 30-year mortgages. And the reason that they're 30-year mortgages is because the longer the payment term, the lower the payment. You can do a really aggressive mortgage payment, try to pay it off in 15 years, and in doing so you'll get a lower interest rate, which is a good deal for you, because Dave Ramsey, if you know anything about a system, is super against any type of debt. So the lower you can make your debt payments, the lower you can make your debt, the better it is going to be in his mind. Now let's actually put numbers to this system here. So I just did a couple calculations. You certainly can do a 15-year fixed rate mortgage, and you certainly can do that. Let's just say you do it no more than 25% of your take-home pay, which I think is also a relatively good suggestion. But based on Ramsey's calculations, in order to afford the median price point in Kansas City, Missouri, in order to afford the median price point in Kansas City, Missouri, the median price point home is $250,000. Calculating that, if you were to take his advice, take a 15-year mortgage on it, and then also make sure that your mortgage is less than 25% of your take-home pay, then you would have to make, just a rough estimate, over $120,000 a year in order to afford an average home in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, you go to Kansas City, Kansas, depending on where you go, Johnson County, the average price point home there is $300,000. So you can extrapolate it from there. I looked up the average household income in Kansas City, and it's right about $56,000 for a household in Kansas City. And so if you take that, I took away a little bit for taxes. I just estimated a little bit off of that for taxes. And that means for your average family in Kansas City, your mortgage payment over a 15-year fixed rate mortgage should be $1,111.87. And the amount that you could borrow is $129,000 paid off in 15 years. And then that means the house that you would be able to buy would cost you right about $161,000. And you'd be limited to certain areas. I kind of wanted to show you what that map would look like here as we kind of scroll through the MLS, the multiple listing service, where the homes are listed. You can see that your homes are limited. You can also see that if you wanted to live north of the river, your options would be extremely limited. So that would limit you to certain school districts. If you have a family, that might be an issue. If you wanted to be in certain school districts, you might have to live in a condo or a townhome or something like that. So this is what it would, if you were just an average family living in Kansas City making $56,000, this is what you'd be limited to if you were to follow Dave Ramsey's advice. Now, there are people who make a lot less than that, people who make a lot more than that. So it's not a one size fits all. I just wanted to show you, if you were to follow this advice to the T, then what would you, what could you afford in Kansas City?
Fixed rate, 25% of your take home pay. Always, everyone, anytime you buy a piece of real estate, get title insurance 100% of the time.
So you might be wondering what title insurance is, and I think this is a really good piece of advice. Most of my clients don't necessarily have to worry about that because not that they don't have to worry about title insurance, but typically every title company that closes a client in Kansas City will have title insurance included. And typically in a Kansas City transaction, whether Kansas or Missouri, the typical go-to is that the seller will pay for the title insurance. Now, what is title insurance? It's protecting the new homeowner against any prior liens against the home that were not uncovered. They are protecting the owner from the previous owner trying to come back and say, hey, this property is actually mine. So title insurance protects the buyer and the seller pays for it. So I think it's a pretty good deal for home buyers in Kansas City. So I would agree with this 100%. Always get title insurance. One of the things that he has to mention when he's talking about it is because there are different states that don't typically have title insurance in their real estate transactions, but if you're buying in Kansas City, whether on the Kansas or Missouri side, title insurance is pretty standard.
Anytime you're buying a piece of property that is not a traditional subdivision lot, meaning it's very, very predictable, always get a survey. So if I bought 3 acres that turned out to be 1.75. You get a survey on it. Okay, now you got a standard subdivision lot that is pre-platted and has changed hands 3 or 4 times. You don't have to worry about that. It is what it is. But if you're buying something otherwise, get a survey, get title insurance, get a home inspection.
So a survey is not a home inspection. It's different. He's going to talk about that in a little bit. But a survey is when you get a professional surveyor to make sure that your property lines are what you expect them to be. So when he was giving the example of buying 3 acres and all of a sudden it's 1.5 acres, that's a pretty extreme example. I've never really seen anything quite like that extreme, but I understand what he's saying. If you're buying a piece of land that you expect is 2 acres, then you're going to want to make sure that you know where those boundaries are for that acreage. And if you're buying something in a neighborhood like I live in, That's typically not going to be something that you need to survey unless you really just want to. I've also sold real estate too and helped people buy and sell real estate in which the fence line, I mean, I'm sure you've all read these horror stories where the fence line is built like 2 feet on somebody's property. So if you suspect anything like that and you're concerned about something like that, then I would definitely get a survey, even if you're in a neighborhood like Dave Ramsey is talking about that's kind of pre-platted in a just well-developed neighborhood.
Inspection. Get a home inspection. You're 20 years old. You're not an expert on much of anything in that house, unless you just happen to be an electrician or something, and then you would be, right? But get a home inspection. Period. I've bought and sold several thousand pieces of real estate. I get a home inspection. Last house I bought, I got one. Okay. I can go in there and scratch around in the crawl space and try to figure it out, but for what it costs, let somebody else do it, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with this. Get a home inspection when you're buying a home. The only extreme examples that I can even think of is if you're a home inspector yourself and you're buying a home and you can do a kind of a home inspection, or you know enough about the home to take it without an inspection, then that's really the only time I would ever encourage anybody to waive an inspection. And even then, it's even helpful to have another set of eyes to look at the home, because you don't know what a home inspection will uncover. The past few years have been really difficult for buyers getting a home with a home inspection, because what happens is, as there are more and more buyers and more offers on a property, as people are trying to be competitive, they're waiving all these rights to the home inspections. Now, here's a very common waiver to a home inspection, or taking a property as is, and you can see that there are 3 options here on this. I'll give you a little bit of time to read it, but basically the first option says that you can do a home inspection and you can back out of the contract if you don't like what the home inspection reveals, but you cannot ask the seller for any repairs. The second option is that you can do a home inspection for informational purposes only, but you don't have any rights to back out of the contract due to the home inspection. So if you uncover a nasty sewer or a broken foundation or something like that, you cannot back out of the contract. It's just yours to live with. It's for your information only. And the last one, the third one, is that you can do no home inspection. Now, with these options, I would say really stay away from 2 and 3, and if you need to, then take number 1, because number 1 at least gives you the option to back out of the contract. Because yes, you lose your money for your home inspection. That does stink. Home inspections can cost anywhere from $300 to $1,000, and that stinks that you lose that money. But at least you're not making a huge investment into something that is going to cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And there's an interesting article too that people over the past year who have bought homes without home inspections are now suing their realtors and people that have helped them buy the home, because they're saying they encourage me not to get a home inspection. I would say always get a home inspection. If you are going to waive a home inspection, make sure you're talking with your realtor very thoroughly to make sure you know exactly what you're doing if you're waiving a home inspection. Now, speaking of real estate, if you didn't know, I do help people buy and sell real estate here in the Kansas City metro area. So if you're looking to move to Kansas City from a different state, if you're looking to sell a home in Kansas City, I would love to talk to you. My phone number is 626-226-6611. My email is jaylenn.wong@gmail.com. I'd love to just have a conversation, even if you're a few months out from moving out here to Kansas City, or if you're looking to sell in Kansas City. I'd love to have you on my podcast where I interview you, and you get a chance to tell buyers all the reasons that you love your home. I'm not aware of anybody else doing this right now in Kansas City. So again, give me a call, 626-226-6611.
Don't buy a house that is a great price but is ugly from the street. First house I bought was that. I got a great deal, and this house was ugly from the street. There's no fixing ugly.
Yeah, that's
you
hard to
can't fix ugly. Okay, it's just still going to be no. Well, we could no. Don't try to fix ugly. Ugly, you just look like had plastic surgery and you shouldn't have bothered. Oh, don't do it. Don't. You just can't fix it. Leave it alone. Just don't. It's not a good buy, because if you get a good buy.
Yeah, I think that this is also really good advice. Don't buy an ugly house, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. You're gonna go around and you're gonna sell that house again, and you're gonna move into a different house. And so if you buy an ugly house now, it's most likely going to be ugly when you sell it, unless you do a lot of work to it, which will be really expensive. So don't buy an ugly house. Buy a house that is going to appeal to a first-time home buyer in 5 or 10 years, because that's who you're going to be targeting when you sell your home.
On it now, when you get ready to sell it, you know what you have? an ugly house. And you're going to give somebody else a good deal because nobody wants an ugly house. So that there's a reason it was cheap when you bought it, and there'll be a reason it's cheap when you sell it. So,
That's a good
and that's
point.
also true with the actual floor plan. I bought a house one time. No, actually, I didn't buy. I rented it one time. That was a 4-bedroom, but to get to one of the bedrooms, you had to walk through the other bedroom.
Oh yeah, that's terrible.
This is we used to call these country built houses where you just keep adding on.
Okay, so it's kind of funny that he says this. It's kind of funny that he says this because I actually have a house in which to get to what we use as the master bedroom, you have to either walk through the one of our kids' bedrooms, or you have to walk through our only full bathroom. And I mean, it's a negative. I don't think it's going to stop our house from selling. We love our house. I think we do have a beautiful house. It is 100 years old, but you're going to find some weird things in Kansas City, especially if you're looking for houses that are older than 30 or 40 years old. You have a lot of historic houses, especially in downtown KC and midtown, especially in midtown Kansas City, that are going to have some weird quirks, and they're going to be beautiful from the outside, but from the inside, you're going to find, for some reason, like one of the things in our neighborhood is most of the houses have only one full bathroom. We have a 4-bedroom house with one full bathroom that everybody kind of shares, and we have a half bath downstairs that makes it a little bit easier, but you can't shower, you can't do anything like that. So, I mean, I do understand his point.
Adding on, and you just go, yeah, well, there was actually no plan from the beginning, and then you've got no plan. So be careful with that kind of stuff. You can get excited, particularly on your first buy, and try to buy something that's a little bit boring.
That's good advice.
You know, don't try to like reinvent the word. I'm going to do a rehab. Oh God, no.
Well,
Please.
I mean, you could pick something that's got things that you can fix. Like if the carpet's super ugly, there's things that are outdated. Like you can change that, but
you can put the gutters up. That's fine. But don't tell me you got to change the whole. No, I got to tear it out. I got to add. No. Just boring means less risk going in and less risk going out.
Okay, I do agree overall with boring equals more sellable when you do go to sell it. However, if you're going to do some rehab to a house, I think the safest thing is kitchen. If you put in a new kitchen, most people are going to like that. Even if you put it in as your style, if you sell it 5 years later, it's a 5-year-old kitchen, most people will see that as a positive. When he says don't do a full rehab, it really kind of depends on what you want to rehab and your budget. Now, if you have a really big budget and you can put down 50% and still have money to rehab a house, then I would say, go for it. But he's right for the most part in that you don't want to buy something that you're going to have to completely turn over in order to make some money in however many years when you go and sell it.
And so a nice little house with a little picket fence and little bushes out front, and you look at it from the street and everybody goes, oh, that's cute. That's where you want to start.
What do you think about corner lots? Because when we bought in our neighborhood before we came here, we thought we had a good lot because we were on the corner by the gate. And for us, it was great. We thought, we take the dog out. It's easy access. But then when we got ready to sell, it sold for less.
Corner lots are a mixed blessing because generally corner lots present well from the street.
Right.
But you have no freaking backyard. You got this little...
I think he'll go on to say this, but it obviously depends on which subdivision you're buying in Kansas City. If you're buying in a pretty standard subdivision, I think most corner lots do actually have a lot of house. I do think though, if you get into the more historic areas of Kansas City, where houses were built 100 years ago, like where we live, then the person right next to us has a corner lot, and the way that it's kind of shaped, I do see what they're saying in that they have a very impressive house from the street. But from the backyard, they have a very strange layout for the backyard that they have, and even the garage that they have is very strange. I really do prefer our lot in that it's not a corner lot. I think he's right, but he's going to go on to say that your mileage may vary, especially if you're buying in different areas.
Tiny triangle back there where they crammed the house back inside at a 45. And so it depends on the subdivision, depends on the lot size,
right, all
those kinds of things. But generally speaking, you get a nice presentation from the front, and then you're pinched in the back.
Yeah,
that's generally what you get. So watch for that. That's not the end of the world, but watch for that. Again, if you've got a concern when you're looking at it, know that the buyer, when you get ready to sell, it's going to have the same concern. So just don't get so excited you rationalize your way into stupidity. I know a guy who's done that a lot in his life, and that's how he has a radio show. So.
And he's right. I think that if you watch my guide for first-time home buyers that I linked here, one of the things that I first say is that try to think rationally rather than emotionally. I know house buying is a tremendously emotional process. Think as rationally as you can when you make this big decision. This is going to be the biggest purchase that you are probably going to make, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. This is going to be the biggest check that you ever write, especially if you put down 20%, like Dave Ramsey says. So what did you think about Dave Ramsey's ideas? Leave a comment below. Please subscribe to the channel.